So, hi everyone. I'm here to give a presentation indeed about why not make a 13th in a dozen, or why you shouldn't make, but instead make games that get people excited. But before I go into details, I would like to present where the wind blows, so to speak. At least the idiom works in Finnish. So who am I? So I'm Jussi Autio, and I've been in the game business for 12 years. I worked in 5 different companies in different roles. I tend to call myself a business-oriented designer. And as a designer, I've done over a dozen games, but a couple of things I mentioned. I went the game that went viral already back in 2008, which I will be using as one of the examples today. I have also done serious games that were awarded in Nordic Serious Games Conference. And another example I will be using today is a game that got nominated in Gamescom Awards last year. On top of this, I was the designer of Oulu Game Lab, which was super awesome as it has been selected as the best in the world in one category, and it has been exported to several different countries, including Japan. And when we did that, that's like mind-blowing, teaching Japanese how to make games. Sure, it's not Tokyo, but Sendai, but still. Nowadays, I'm involved with mostly in a company called Free2App, where we bring the free-to-play model to other industries. So I find myself in an interesting exploration of fertile fields. But more relevant is my role indeed in Frozen Vision, which I will be using also as an example on today's talk. So what I will be discussing, I think, is better giving you a glimpse on alternative names that I was considering and asking opinion. What should I call my speech? And those included: choose your role models carefully. Best way to survive is your own way. Or wake up, nobody wants 13th in a dozen. Or don't look up the big boys, make your own games to stay ahead, meaning indeed that if you copy others, you will always be behind. Or just plain old resist the pressure, don't join the clone armies, or why not make your own games for a change? It's good for business. One thing that when I was working in Oulu Game Lab, one of my favorite lectures were these 10 ways to be successful in game industry from a different perspective. It starts from what you're doing. And I have been around long enough that I know the actual stories behind the companies like Sumea and others, so I could teach those to the university students. But many of these actually relate to the fact that we don't always have the biggest teams, biggest budgets, or most experience. So today I will be focusing on those that are a bit more approachable, a bit more universal, I would say. So I would say today I will be focusing on innovative design, redefining a genre instead of just copying it, and clearly you need to have an understanding of your target audience, and it never hurts to have an original attitude. Why this is because, well, we already on the previous talk heard how difficult it is, or what's the competition. But here is a Prisma from Oulu, where I'm located. It has approximately 20,000 products in there. And imagine if all of those were clothes, just clothes, 20,000 different clothes. Would you then want to have the most durable clothes, the best bargain, and do exactly what everyone else is doing? Or would you consider that, okay, I want to understand who I'm making these clothes for, and how do I stand out when there is so bloody huge amount of competition out there? And if we compare this very huge mall, if we add another hall next to it, and 2 more at the back, and then add 9 floors on top of that, that's the market on mobile side. So yet again, do you want to make yet another clicker or match-3 game, or something that you see 13 in a dozen? So since everything has become a lot more difficult, when the competition has become harder and harder, what is the way to be Ozymandias, the king of kings? Like how to survive in different, on the very competitive market. Some say indeed that gameplay is king. I wholeheartedly agree. There are many kings and gameplay is definitely one. Others say that execution is king. That without execution, even a great idea is meaningless, or great design is meaningless, which I also wholeheartedly agree. Many in the recent days say that analytics is king, but in a way, yes, you can verify lots of things via analytics, but you need to have a vision, you need to have a design in order to get something to analyze. You can't have that automatically. And any desire to instantly get to analyze means that you really don't have a clue, really. Some say that free-to-play is the new king, which I think is a different talk. Because free-to-play, to my opinion, is more like a water that makes an ocean. If you want to go sailing, yes, make a free-to-play game, but there's no harm done going mountain climbing either. So it's a slightly separate talk. So, as I said, I will be using a couple of real-life examples on how to survive even if you don't have the most experienced team or biggest budget and so forth. And once I got started, way over 10 years ago, we took over around $250,000 loan, something I don't necessarily encourage people to do. And a game called The Club really was our way to survive. It was a board game, an iPhone game about love in the nightclubs. Different gameplay mechanics on different platforms, but definitely the same theme. And this one, the board game side, was the first Finnish board game to get American publisher, and the second one to have non-Finnish publisher for a board game. And this alone helped these games get viral. In just 3 months, there were over 150 newspaper articles in Finland alone, and at least 50 that I know of abroad as well, which for a bunch of university dropouts like myself, that opened door for survival. We didn't know how to best write the huge viral hit back at the days, like I would know nowadays, but it was still enough. Making something different and original helped us survive for 5 more years from there on. Then the most recent example, Urban Empire, that I was working on the last 2 years, well, slightly over, almost a year ago, was starting to wrap things up. And that was a big PC management strategy game that basically takes the city builders, adds political decision making, and 200 years of history, so you basically live the story of your own city and try to stay in power that you could get voted out. Those who know about the game, then I think it's no surprise that it was very, very troubled development, because I would say now as an aftersight that already after 6 months we were 4 months behind schedule. And from the get-go, it was a fight against cancellation, mostly due to totally wrong resourcing. We had only 2 programmers when the game itself would have definitely needed a lot more, because we were doing something that no one else had done before, and having the manpower to actually test things and try things out instead of trying to get them to work first time. That was the biggest mistake. The publisher naturally knew this. I'm super happy with how the publisher dealt with us. And when we did manage to crawl to the finish line every time, somehow, they knew that we are in trouble. And that's why the marketing strategy was as open as possible. There was no cinematic trailer to boost the game. Most of the PR was handled with Let's Play videos, hands-on, so that people would get to see how it plays out. And even though publisher was as open as possible, knowing that we're in trouble, It was nominated on that Gamescom Awards. It did create a very big hype, and even though I would say it did flop, but it didn't flop that badly. It has sold more than Next Machina, as I learned. Last time I checked, was in Steam by 50,000 copies, and it hasn't been on any of the sales before. And indeed, if the game would have been as brilliant as we were hoping it would be if we had the resources, it had a huge, huge potential because it broke the record for pre-orders for the publisher. Then a third example. Over a year ago, I was participating in an IGDA evening, which is pretty much the inspiration for this talk. It was one of those evenings where game companies that have established, they have games, they get to present their games to the audience there. And I noticed that there were 3 racing games on the same evening. And they were pretty cool. One was Top Down Party Racing game, very much in the spirit of Slicks and Slide, if there is old geezers like myself who remember that. One was more Mario Kart style, like fun and wacky racing game. And one was just a third-person arcade racing game. And they all looked very, very beautiful. They had excellent execution. They were fun to play. And they had the most fruitful audience, their peers, who all want the best for your game, or their game. And I still dare to say that nobody really promoted them, because having all this is simply not enough. If you are making a game that hasn't become extinct, those games have been around for a very, very long time, and they weren't offering us any originality, any new kind of experience that would get us excited, that would spark the interest, that wow, that's an amazing new touch on that genre. Then why make that game? Don't make a game unless you're bringing something that people honestly can get excited about. For example, there's nothing wrong with making a racing game, which leads us to my last point. What we're doing with the Frozen Vision, we are doing a turn-based, real-time, tactical racing strategy game in a dystopian but pre-apocalyptic world. And one might say that, what the fuck, what does this mean? But let's have a quick look. So now the video. So one of the slogans we have for this game is that if XCOM was a racing game, it would be Axiom X. And this actually, this was a shorter version of the pitch video we're showing for publishers, hoping to get indeed a publisher for the game. And for us, I can say for a fact that this video, or the longer version of it, was enough that we did get the peers to ask that, oh my god, that is so awesome, please can I somehow follow the development? Can you let us know? Or just plain oldly, when we explained that, well, it's on development and we're looking for a publisher, that then I was silenced with the shut up and take my money. So creating something unique is something that I feel that everyone should be doing. You shouldn't copy what others have done, but make your own games instead. So on this field, you should try to be the red flower and not the yellow flower where clearly there is more than 13 in a dozen. So to wrap things up, the famous poem, British poem about the Ozymandias, I would say that it goes like this. And on the pedestal, these words appear. My name is Uniqueness, the King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. So thank you all, and if there is questions, I think I have time for a couple of questions.
Can I follow up?
Once we sign a publisher, and if it's not any of the big publishers that want to control everything, then sure, because as an indie developer, and what at least I learned from the previous talk is indeed that you should get the word out as early as possible. That's why I wanted to show already our pitch video, which is annoyingly rare that what people do. Any other questions? Yeah.
If you are an indie designer and you're making something super unique, and
well, if you are an indie designer and want to make something super unique, but also want to get published, how likely is it that you're going to find a publisher who's not going to say, oh my god, you can't do that?
Well, there is there is a limit. Like, you can be like Depression Quest, which is awesome if someone exploring new fertile fields, but it's also a business decision. So if you take tried and true gameplay mechanics, like another one, this looks original, it's an original mix, but I would say that what we have also taken is taking Formula 1, adding gameplay mechanics from Blood Bowl and FTL, and then what we feel that this is like a combination of something that someone has done and thus making it slightly easier sell. It's a new interesting mix on a new theme indeed, but as long as gameplay isn't too complicated, like if it's not a paradox game, then you can go deeper on the meta game and like the association and building characters and so forth. But if the gameplay itself is hard to learn, then don't build as wide like meta game or something, so that where the player's focus is.
Okay.
So I hope I answered. I'm not sure
sort
if
I did. If I can continue with another one, what if you have a game that has very like learnable mechanics or things that are already known, but you have a theme that's somewhat new, but you're looking to find an audience that doesn't really have anything catered to them yet?
Yeah, I would encourage to do exactly that. Like, yes. If we take the club example, the board game side is very much, if you remember from our childhood, the amazing labyrinth where you push tiles and the labyrinth changes. It borrows a lot from that. It's not a copy, but very similar mechanics. And the iPhone game, it was popular at the time. The kind of, I don't remember the name of the game, but the landing, you needed to make the airplanes land in a nice way. So similar way, you needed to control the dancers so that they meet their perfect match on the dance floor. So similar game mechanics, easy to learn, but a new theme, and it did get viral. So definitely also using tried and true mechanics, but bringing it somewhere where people can get excited about it. So.